Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to start my March Buzzwordathon reading vlog. And full disclosure, I have actually read my first book and I forgot to film this opening clip before I started reading because I was running around like a crazy person this morning. I will insert some clips in a moment because very on brand for me, I was at the ice hockey. It was the Australian Women's Ice Hockey League finals here in Melbourne and I had not managed to get to any of the regular season games. It just didn't work out this year. And so I was determined to spend all weekend at the finals because they play the finals over Saturday and Sunday. There's 6 games. There were 2 exhibition games because one of the 6 teams had an exhibition season. They're joining the league full-time from next year. Spoiler alert, they're the team that I would like to follow. They have a little bit of work to do, but it was really fun getting to see them. Yesterday there was an exhibition game and there were the 2 semi-finals, and today there was an exhibition game. Then there was the game to find out who won the bronze medal, and then the grand final game in the afternoon. I woke up yesterday. I had tickets for the whole weekend. I woke up yesterday. I could not breathe. All of my sinuses completely blocked. I still sound ridiculous. And currently my ears are ringing, which probably not a good thing, but I can at least breathe today. I slept all of last night and I didn't need to get up and I was fine. So I'm like, great, I can go to the finals today. So I did. And I feel like it's kind of on brand because Kayla is often talking about the ice hockey in her vlogs. So anyway, I decided to read the first book for this reading vlog while I was, in between games and whatnot. And I was reading the book that I picked for the buzzword prompt of thing in the title. And for that, I decided to read A Crazy Little Thing Called Love by Christina C. Jones. Unfortunately, this is kind of the most disappointing Christina C. Jones book that I have read. I really love Christina C. Jones and I like the writing in this. It was very dramatic and almost melodramatic in a way. And I totally get why. The things that happen in the book, I totally understand why it is the way that it is, but they're just things that I don't like reading about in my contemporary romances, or at least not in this particular combination. This is about Simone, who owns a florist or a flower shop, and Roman, who runs a coffee shop. And they all work in the same area and they meet by chance, and Roman falls hard and fast for Simone. And she's kind of weary. We know that she's constantly sending messages to her best friend, but she's not getting a response. My first instinct was that the friend was dead. Turns out, and this will just be a content warning, is that her friend is in a coma and has been in a coma for 2 years and does through the course of the book pass away. And so she's kind of reluctant to get into this relationship. And then she finds out that Roman is a parent and that he is currently living with the mother of his child, and they're not together. He's very adamant about that they're not together. His child's mother is living with him because she lost her apartment and needed to save some money, and he, being the good person that he is, doesn't want the mother of his child to be, have nowhere to live. And that I'm fine with. But Simone isn't initially, and I get why. Like, totally fair. I get why. This story, it started out so well. It really did. There was great chemistry between the characters, and then it's all of this interpersonal stuff around this relationship that Roman has with the mother of his child and with Simone, and how Simone feels about that and how Roman feels about that. And it all blows up in everyone's faces. And then Leah, who is the mother of Roman's child, the first time we meet her is encouraging him to go out with her, and then she does a complete 180 and she is inserting herself into their relationship and making things really difficult. I don't like that nonsense. I don't, that's not a me thing in my romances, just putting it out there. The child, Zara, she's adorable. There's lots of really great side characters, and like the central romance is good. And I'm all for my romances having conflict and people needing to work things out. I don't like it when it's the only thing that's going on in the story, but I don't mind having that as conflict. But yeah, this just felt very, very over the top. There is also a content warning for an on-page miscarriage. So just be mindful of that if you are picking it up and you're sensitive to those topics. And there are conversations around that miscarriage that are not particularly nice, which again was not something that I was fully expecting. And I'm now just realizing that I don't know if there is a content warnings section in this book, because I was reading it on my Kindle, so it sort of just jumps straight into the story. So we're going to see if there is. Doesn't look like there's content warnings. So normally I'm pretty good. I tend to check the content warnings. It's not so much as a trigger for me, it's just that on top of everything else, it was a lot. I didn't hate it, but I also didn't have the best of time with it. So as I've been doing with all of my other videos, I'm going to give you some recommendations for other books that have thing in the title. These are going to be from various genres, various readership categories, just because I tend to read quite widely. The first one is a middle fiction poetry anthology. It's called It's the Sound of the Thing by Maxine, Beneba, Clarke. I talked about this last year. I absolutely loved this collection of poems. It's 100 poems for young people, and they're all poems about everyday life. And Maxine, Beneba, Clarke is just a master at writing poetry, at the language she uses, at telling story through poems. And it's one of my favorite poetry collections that I have collected. I've been collecting quite a few recently, and I adore this. I really do. Then there's Things You Save in a Fire by Katherine Center, which I don't think I talked about because when I read it, it was around the time of the boycott, the St. Martin's Press boycott last year. So I actually listened to this as an audio. It is a contemporary romance story. It's about Cassie, who is a firefighter. She is a firefighter in a big city, and then I think she has to move to a small town where she finds herself going through hazing because they're really not all that okay with having a female firefighter in their ranks. And the exception to the firefighters who don't want to have her around is the rookie on the team, who really enjoys being around her, and she has always been told never date a firefighter, and so that is going through her mind, and it is how their relationship develops. It was a really interesting story. Katherine Center is someone who does have a very consistent writing style that I appreciate. Then there is Beautiful Things by Emily Rath. This is her historical romance story. It is a polyamorous romance, and it is set in the Regency period. I don't know these periods, honestly. Like, it's not something I know. So it's the first book in the Second Sons series, and we have Rosalie, who basically has no money, and she's sent for by the Dowager Duchess at Alcott Hall, who apparently knew her mother. And when she gets there, she finds that there is this party happening, and the Dowager Duchess wants her there in order to keep an eye on her son, who needs to choose a wife. And the Dowager Duchess wants Rosalie to kind of help make that happen. And along the way, she is charmed by three very different men. There is the Duke's younger brother, there is a returned lieutenant from the West Indies, and Mr. Burke, who is a friend to both of them. And so it's the start of their polyamorous relationship. Emily Rath writes very engaging stories. They're very fast-paced. They're always very long, but, you know, very quick to read. And I mean, if you like her other polyamorous romances, you might like this historical, because I don't tend to gravitate towards historical romances, but I enjoyed this series. Then there's Everything for You by Chloe Liese, which is part of the Bergman Brothers series. This is a queer story within the series, and we're following Oliver Bergman and Gavin Hayes, who both play for the same soccer team. And this is an age gap. It's very much a Grumpy Sunshine story. They're two characters that kind of butt heads. Gavin is kind of at the end of his playing career, and Oliver is the young hotshot, and they fall for one another. And then finally, this is a non-fiction book. This is Wild Things by Sally Rippin. Sally Rippin is a children's author. She writes things like Billy B. Brown, Hey Jack, Polly and Buster, and all of those kinds of books. And this is her writing about her personal experience of watching her son struggle to read. It documents kind of her journey to discovering that her child has dyslexia, and struggles to read, which she, as someone who is very highly literate and loves to read, finds really challenging. But it also looks at how the schooling system doesn't always adequately cater for those children, and how she had to advocate for her child to receive the instruction that they needed in order to succeed. So it's a really interesting read. It's very easy to read. And the one thing that I always get concerned about this, because Sally Rippin is an Australian author as well, about how anything like this portrays teachers, because for the most part, most teachers go into teaching determined to do the best they can for every student. And so sometimes when you're on the parent side of things, it doesn't always seem that way. But what she highlights is that at a system level, there are not enough things in place, and things are changing slowly to improve that. And so it was never, there was never an attack on teachers or individual teachers. It was more a reflection on how at a system level in Australia, the school system can do more and can do better to cater to the needs of all their students, especially those with learning difficulties. Those are my recommendations for Thing in the Title. The next book that I'm going to read for this month's Buzzwordathon challenge is the challenge to read a book with books on the cover. I'm going to be reading Can't Spell Treason Without T, because there's bookshelves full of books, and then I'll recommend you some books for that. Now I'm going to sort out my life for tomorrow, because I left the house 12 hours ago by my current time, so I need to sort my life out. Hi guys, so it is a couple of days later. I have finished reading Can't Spell Treason Without T. Full confession, I was going to wait I did wait a day to film my thoughts on this, because I finished the book last night and I was not feeling well. I probably shouldn't have read last night, and today I'm just worse. So that cold that I had over the weekend, that has not gone away, but I figured I would film anyway, because I actually have full proper makeup on. You probably can't tell now because it is 6:30 on a Wednesday night after a day at school, but I had to put full makeup on because we had our school photo day. It's the only day of the year that I will actually put on actual real foundation, and I don't think that has helped, because I think it has irritated my eyes, which has just made everything else worse. But that's fine, we're here. That's my little woe is me speech. But as I said, I read Can't Spell Treason Without T by Rebecca Thorne. This was for the cover prompt of Books on the Cover, and I actually really enjoyed this. I think there are some pacing issues with it, for sure. There were parts that I felt were just quite slow, but overall, I really enjoyed this. It's a cozy fantasy. It is sapphic. It is closed door. It was honestly just full of little things that I adore, mostly tea and books. So this is set in a fantasy world. You have Raina, who is a royal bodyguard to a queen who is known for temper tantrums and just generally being bloodthirsty. And Raina is in love with a mage called Chianthi, who is a very powerful mage in the realm. She's kind of like the top mage. Raina and Chianthi's people are from different sort of, I don't want to say kingdoms, but different towns. Chianthi's people do not fall under the rule of Raina's queen. Chianthi has been telling Raina, we just need to, let's run away with me. Run away with me, let's open a bookstore with tea. And in the very first chapter, Raina has just had enough. She's had to kill 2 assassins who have attempted to kill the queen. She's injured, and she also knows that the queen could not care less whether Raina lived or died, because there was a moment where Raina's life was at threat and the queen is like, whatever. And so Raina just decides to leave. That's where the treason part comes in. So she just leaves in the middle of the night. She meets up with Chianthi and they go to this very small, remote mountain town that's kind of difficult to get to. And this town is plagued by dragons. But Chianthi and Raina set up shop in this abandoned barn that was used by bandits, and they convert it into their bookstore and tea store, and they live there. And then all the townspeople get involved because they're really intrigued by the idea. Both Chianthi and Raina are very stubborn and overuse their abilities, either magically or just physically, and end up getting cranky with each other because they keep getting injured or hurt or just being generally unwell. But the whole thing is just super cozy. And on top of that, they're trying to figure out why the dragons keep attacking this town, which may or may not have to do with the fact that maybe a dragon egg or more have been stolen. So you can kind of see in this one where the sequel will go. I don't know if I'll pick up the sequel. I kind of like this on its own. We'll see. I just liked the cozy bookstore and tea vibes. Like that's I live for that. Also, Chianti likes houseplants, and she's determined to come up with a houseplant that nobody can kill so that people can have plants in their life, and that sounds like a worthy goal. I had fun with this. I'm glad that I finally read it. This is something off my physical TBR from pre-2025, which is great because I have not been making as much progress in that one as I would like to. In terms of 5 other recommendations for books that have books on the cover, the first one I'm going to recommend was one of my favourite middle fiction reads from last month, and that was The Lost Library by Rebecca Stead. This one is told from 3 perspectives. It is from the perspective of an 11-year-old boy, a cat, and a ghost librarian. And it is a contemporary story with sort of supernatural undertones to it that sees the boy investigating the mystery of why the town's library burnt down many years ago before he was born. He's intrigued by this when he borrows some books from a little library that pops up. The ghost librarian sets up this little library, and the cat is the guardian of the little library. And it's how all of their stories intertwine, how they're connected, who they're connected by. And it was just so beautifully written. I've actually lent it to one of the Year 4 teachers at my school to read to her class because she was intrigued by it when I gave it to her as a recommendation. But I just loved the language in it so much. Like, it was a wonderful read. Another recommendation I have is Unhallowed by Jordan L. Hawke. This is a historical queer paranormal story. I read this this year as well, and I was really intrigued by it. I'd had it for ages. I hadn't really thought much of it until I picked it up. I think I might have even got it like on a Stuff Your Kindle Day sale. Essentially, the tagline for this book is monsters, murder, and librarians. So again, you know, we're on theme. And you have a librarian who works in this very specialized library, and a friend has gone missing who used to work at the library, and then suddenly a new bookbinder turns up. And this bookbinder has a secret and may or may not be trying to get to the heart of this library and to discover the secrets embedded within the walls of this library. So it's really fun and enjoyable. It's very much an antagonists or hate to love kind of romance between these two men, but really well worth reading. Then there is The Mistletoe Motive by Chloe Liese, which is a holiday novella. It's a contemporary romance, and it is set in a bookstore. You have 2 workers in the store who are vying for the same managerial position because the store can no longer sustain paying both of them, and neither of them are willing to give up their job. And they decide that over the Christmas period they're going to see who makes the most, I think it's the most sales over the holiday period, and then whoever wins will take the role and the other person will voluntarily leave. But of course, things don't go according to plan. This is very much a rivals to lovers story. It is so great. It has really great diabetes rep as well as demisexual rep in the story, and was honestly just a delight, and I like reading it around the holiday season. Another one that I read, this was an Amazon short story that I think I got as part of their first reads program, and I know Amazon, Devil, etc., but I had it anyway, so it's on there, is The Bookstore Wedding. This one's by Alice Hoffman, and it's kind of the roundabout story of how a couple ends up married and sort of the family real life things that interrupt their ability to get married over time. Yeah, it was just really interesting. I don't really read Alice Hoffman, so it was the first time I'd kind of read the book, so it was an interesting first introduction to her writing. And then finally, a book that most people have probably read, but I'm going to include it on here because it was my first book by this author and I still have very fond memories of it, and that is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I like the concept of this book. So you have 2 writers, one who writes, you know, contemporary romance, one who writes very serious kind of literary books, I think it was literary. They do know each other. They've been crossing paths for a long time. They end up staying next door to each other in these beach houses while they're trying to overcome writer's block. And part of the way that they plan to get over this writer's block, once they sort of get over the fact that they're annoyed at each other, is that they decide that they're going to swap genres and they're going to write in each other's genre to try and break their writer's block because they're trying something different. That involves them working together because they need to help each other with each other's writing craft. And along the way, they fall for one another. And this one does have some deeper topics underpinning a lot of the story as well. So there is more of an emotional toll in the book, not necessarily between the couple, but just sort of in their outside external lives that are impacting on them. But yeah, like I have fond memories of Beach Read because it was probably one of the first really big contemporary romances that I read when it was first released. And obviously Emily Henry writes contemporary romances for the masses so that it has broader appeal. So it's an interesting thing for me because it kind of straddles what I like in romance with what I like in contemporary fiction with romance, if that makes sense. And on that note, I'm going to end this Buzzwordathon vlog for March. Hopefully there were some recommendations in here, or you just enjoyed hearing my thoughts on the books that I picked. What is next month? I did look this up before, but clearly I've forgotten. Next month is animals. So animals for both prompts, which will be interesting. And I will have an update for you when I get to it next month. Thank you for putting up with my rambling. If you've gotten all the way through this video, well done for a start, and feel free to talk to me about the books down below, or just leave a book stack emoji if you want to let me know that you're here. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.